Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see. Sorry, Maria. Mm-hmm.
I just want to go to address what Mr. McGovern had brought up, which was the whole issue of climate, the budget cutting climate, and so anything that you propose is going to have to be paid for. So how do you think that this year, even with these very clean stories, we're going to be able to advance the legislation?
This legislation would be included in the context of a broader surface transportation authorization bill. In an ideal climate, you ought to be able to move that bill on its own merits, and should be done. But that rarely happens. Rarely are measures considered on their own merits rather than in the context of a larger package of legislation. And what I think is likely to happen is that after a great deal of huffing and puffing and pushing and shoving on both sides, they'll wind up with simply extending current law, because there is no funding mechanism to fund surface transportation at the level needed or to the level recommended by the two national commissions that evaluated surface transportation needs. There will be no appetite to impose a fee on trucks, heavier trucks, driving longer distances, longer hours on the road with increased risk to people and to the traveled roadway. And without that, I don't think you'll see legislation passed. But if you don't make the effort, if you don't lay the issue out, if you don't introduce the bill, if you don't make the advocacy for it, then you never advance the cause. And we do have an administration that is willing to stand up for safety. We do have a Secretary of Transportation who's made safety his primary advocacy. Think of his campaign against distracted driving, people on cell phones, people texting while they're driving, both in the transit arena and highways and in railroading. Secretary LaHood has been a vigorous campaigner and advocate for safer traveled way for America. This is the best opportunity we've had in a very long time. It was the Clinton administration, mind you, that advocated taking motor carrier, the Office of Motor Carriers, out of the Federal Highway Administration at a lower level and raising it to the level of an administration on an equal footing with the Federal Aviation Administration, Federal Railway Administration, Highway Administration, make this a motor carrier administration. I put the word safety in it. I took that language out of the 1958 Aviation Act, put that in the Motor Carrier Safety Act. Now we have an administration that's willing to enforce it. For 8 years, none of that happened. And now these advocates give voice to the need and strength and support to a willing secretary and a willing administration. So regardless of whether new legislation is enacted, if the existing law is enforced, we'll save lives and make the roadways safer.
Let me take that one. Well, one of the issues is the hours of service for truck drivers, and for almost all the families here, the excessive hours of driving and tired truckers were the element, a key element in these crashes. In addition, there was very little enforcement because of the paper logbooks, and they have now a pending rule, which is going to come out, I believe, in a couple months, on changing the hours of service rules and lowering the number of hours that drivers can drive, and also to require the onboard recorders, electronic onboard recorders. And so those two changes alone will make a huge difference. We would still push further. We would like the hours of service even lower than is proposed, but we wanted to see it come down, at least some right now. And we think those two changes are huge. They will also oppose any increase in truck size and weight if it comes up in the Congress. And we're hoping that they haven't come out yet on the SHIPA bill, have they, Jackie? No. We're hoping that they will endorse the SHIPA bill. We don't always expect bills that we support to go through immediately. But if we could, in 1991 we got the freeze on longer combination vehicles. No one thought we could ever get that through. And it was a wonderful combination of members that made it happen. And it has made a huge difference in this country not to have triple trailers and longer doubles on every highway in the country. And they're only limited to certain states, mostly Midwestern states. So we would like to see a freeze on the size and weight of trucks now, so that individual states are not going to be pushing to increase them and try and get exceptions. And so we're approaching it that way. The trucking industry is approaching it to try and get the increase. And there'll be a collision. We'll be having a number of collisions on this issue. And we may not get the bill through this year or this Congress. I'm hoping we will. And as Mr. Oberstar said, on the big highway bill. And that's often where we get these kinds of important and key changes. So that's it. Yes? It would primarily freeze, just like the longer combination vehicle did. In other words, in whatever state rules there exist, in federal rules, they'd be frozen.
And does it do anything about, does SHIPA do anything about doubles or other?
Well, no, those are covered by the longer combination vehicle freeze.
The SHIPA doesn't have
Well, they don't have to. It doesn't have to, because it's already in effect a freeze. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you so much. Right on time, 12 noon. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming.